everyone, it's Justine and welcome to the 12 Days of Christmas, Day 5. Today I'm going to be working with a variety of different products in order to bring you this card here. Now, I am also celebrating the 12th anniversary of Ellen Hutson over on my Instagram, so be sure to check that out as well. Now, to get started, I'm going to be using some watercolor paper as well as some Nuvo Shimmer powder by Tonic, and I'm going to be using the colors Green, Pet Parade, Atlantis Burst, and Catherine Wheel. And I'm going to be using these powders like a watercolor. So what I do is I just shake some of the powder onto my watercolor paper. You have to be using watercolor paper because you're going to be adding quite a bit of water depending on the look that you want to get. And I'll show you the variety of looks that you can get depending on how much water you add. I have two different shades of green, so I thought I would spray both of those on here, and that way I'll get a little bit of a variety in the pattern that I'm going to get when I add the water. Now, what's really cool about these powders, as well as other powders in the industry that are similar, is that they react with water, of course, and that they don't just have red pigment in them or green pigment, but they also have additional colors like gold or yellow that really bring out a variety of shades. So if you don't like to watercolor, this might be something for you. Now you can add more powder on top and it'll react a little bit with the wet surface, but it is important to just keep adding as much water as you can. Sorry for the camera shake there. I apologize. And so you can see when I first added one spritz of water, you see that variety of colors really deeply and almost as if they are very small details. And when you add more water, then you get these large details and the colors start to mold together. So now that I'm finished adding all of my powder, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave these to dry. It's up to you whether you want to dry them using just air drying and leave them for a little while to sit, or if you want to use a heat gun, it's completely up to you. Depending on the amount of detail you want, you may want to leave it to air dry, as I did find that the colors just sort of blended into one after it was done. But what's really cool is you get this really deep shimmer in it that's hard to pick up on camera, but it is really shiny and really cool. So once that's all dry to the touch, I'm going to add it to my Misti. Now I apologize, I was having some camera stand issues today, and my camera just kind of gets away from itself and starts to move, but you can still see what I'm doing, so I'm not too concerned. So I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to add the Mondo Holly stamp to my surface of my Misti. I'm also using an embossing bag to ensure that everything is all dried up and not going to stick where it shouldn't. And I'm going to ink up my stamp with some VersaMark ink. I'm going to stamp it down here, so now you can see the Mondo Holly. I'm just a little bit zoomed in, so I wanted to make sure you could see me doing that. And I'm going to just stamp down onto the surface. I'm going to do the same thing for the green and the red surface. I did stamp it several times since the distressed cardstock, or the watercolor cardstock rather, that I am using is a little bit textured, so I wanted to make sure I got a good impression. I'm now going in with some Brutus Monroe Gilded embossing powder and just spraying that or spilling that over top of my surface here onto a scrap sheet of computer paper and funneling it back into the bottle here so I could reuse it later. I'm going to go ahead and stamp the red background. Now, I decided to stamp it in black. I wanted to have a little bit of a contrast, and you'll see in the end why, because I ended up adding some black cardstock and wanted to tie in that black surface with the stamp. So you can now see what that Mondo Holly stamp looks like. I didn't really worry about getting a perfect impression since I just needed the berries in order to cut them out, and I went ahead and melted that embossing powder from the gold embossing powder. Now, in order to keep the video fairly short, I just wanted to mention that the Mondo Holly stamp does come with a coordinating die, and I cut that coordinating die out off screen. I went ahead then and I fussy cut the berries here using my Tim Holtz mini Snips scissors. And I'm going to glue those pieces directly on top of the green the green watercolored area over top of the gold because I want those berries to stand out. Now, when I had originally did this card, I didn't film the process. I just kind of created it on my desk, and then I decided, you know what, this card has a lot of really fun techniques. And one thing I forgot to show on screen is that I went ahead with some Nuvo glitter accents that are clear, and I painted over top of the berries, and that created a very glittery surface that you can see in the photo. So now I'm going to go ahead and use the fine frames from Altenew. This is the smaller version. I adore this die. It's one of my favorite dies, and it's always constantly sold out. And I'll link to it below in the video description if I can find some stores that have it in stock. And I just separate all of these. I keep the rest of them for myself for later future projects, but they just create such a little touch of elegance. And they come in two sizes. I'll link to both below in the video description. One is the size of an A2 size card, and these ones are the mini ones. And I just add a little bit of glue here onto the corners and stick this down onto my cardstock. I used the largest size and the third largest size, so I skipped the one that goes in the middle of this one so that I could have a piece of that black sticking out. So when I had originally created this card and added this to the background, I had actually not embossed the holly at all. I had just stamped it in black ink. And then I looked at that black gold, and I really wanted to incorporate more gold into the card. So that's when I went back, redid it, and just redid the holly in some gold embossing powder so that the gold really tied into these frames. The berries in black brought out the black background. And overall, I think this gold on black look is just super elegant. I'm using some Tombow Mono liquid adhesive here to add all of the elements to my project. And I'm going to hold this down with my hand since it is quite a thick piece of cardstock and I want it to stick down to my surface. So I'm going to hold that for a little while with my hands. I'm now going to go in on a spare sheet of black paper, and I am going to go ahead and stamp the sentiment here in VersaMark ink. And I'm going to cover this in gold embossing powder as well. I thought that adding the gold on the black would also be elegant, tie into all the backgrounds and everything like that. I'm using the same embossing powder that I used for the holly, since that would keep everything very consistent. And the sentiment says happiness and cheer, and I think this is a really neutral holiday sentiment, so I really quite like it. And the Instagram hop that's going on today over on my Instagram at Justine Hovey is a celebration for Ellen Hutson's 12th anniversary as a store. What a fabulous store and a fabulous company that supports so many amazing designers and is just always really a pleasure to work with. So it was a warm fuzzies theme, so I thought this happiness and cheer would also tie in quite nicely. Be sure to check out the hop over on Instagram. So I'm going to go ahead and glue the sentiment. Now this gold piece here was actually cut out from the center of that fine frames die. Cuts out a solid piece that I thought instead of making it go to waste, I will use that to frame in my sentiment. I had to trim it down a little bit, but it wasn't too much of a job. So now that gold is just popping everywhere on my card, and I decided to do my signature white frame background by using a white card base, an A2 size 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm scoring that down the middle, and then I went ahead and I glued that on top. And this way I get a beautiful frame that is all the way around and consistent and just frames in my card. It also, I think, makes the card a little bit brighter and pops. You could also add this, of course, to the gold background. This is Tonic Mirror Gold cardstock, or you could, of course, use just a black cardstock. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed these little tips and all these fun products that I used on this card. I'm going to have a supply list in the video description below. And be sure to check out that hop over on Instagram. But in the meantime, if you want to continue on YouTube, I have a suggested video for you, or you can subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I have quite a few videos coming up in the next little while that are already filmed, so be sure to check back soon. Bye-bye.